What would you do if the man you loved vanished the moment you needed him most? Not in a metaphorical way, but literally walked out while you were in labor, alone, terrified, and seconds from bringing new life into the world. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about a woman who was abandoned at her lowest and yet rose higher than anyone ever thought possible. Because when the world told her she was worthless, she built a life worth everything. Stay with us. This isn't just about heartbreak. It's about healing hope and the kind of love that chooses you when others walk away. There's a moment, a terrible, precise moment, when a woman realizes she's truly alone. Not the kind of alone that comes from sitting by yourself at a coffee shop. No, the kind of alone that echoes through your bones while you're hooked up to machines, your body racked with pain, and the only hand you want to hold has vanished. It was nearly 3 a.m. in the birthing wing of Pinecrest Regional Hospital. Emma Blake, 28 years old, clung to the bed rails with a strength she didn't know she had left. Her contractions were rolling in like thunder, sharp, relentless, and she was 17 hours into labor with twins. Every minute felt like an hour. Every nurse who passed her bed gave the same soft glance. "Where's Dad?" She stopped answering after the fifth one. The room smelled of antiseptic and wilted carnations, a sad little bouquet she had picked up for herself days ago. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, like angry insects casting harsh shadows on the walls. Her phone, cracked from when her water broke and she dropped it in a panic, was still silent. No missed calls, no texts, nothing from Jake, her husband, the man who had once kissed her stomach and whispered, "I can't wait to meet them." That man was gone, and Emma had no idea where he went. "You're doing amazing, sweetheart," said Nurse Darlene, a seasoned woman with motherly eyes and calloused hands. She adjusted Emma's IV with practiced care. "He'll come around. Some men get scared." Emma didn't respond. She knew fear had nothing to do with it. Jake had been distant for months. He blamed the pregnancy for their mounting bills, their canceled travel plans, and the fact that their cramped two-bedroom apartment felt like a coffin instead of a home. He drank more, stayed out longer, smelled like cheap cologne and lies. But still, she never thought he'd leave her like this, especially not tonight. She squeezed her eyes shut. Her fingers clutched the edge of the hospital bed, the cold metal biting into her palm. "I'm here," she whispered to the empty space beside her. "I'm here, girls. I'm not going anywhere." Then came the push, the first, the second, the endless blur of medical voices. And at 3:43 a.m., a cry sliced through the air. "En bas I bondes den men lilla staub." Her first daughter, Lily, arrived wailing with lungs full of life. She was placed gently on Emma's chest, warm and perfect and squirming. Emma sobbed, not from pain anymore, but from something deeper, something primal. 18 minutes later, her second daughter, Grace, was born, smaller but fierce, letting the world know she'd arrived. Emma cradled them both, one in each arm, their tiny bodies fitting into her arms like they had always belonged there. "Hey," she breathed, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You made it. I'm your mama, and I promise, you will never feel abandoned. Not by me." Just then, the door creaked open. Emma's heart jumped. For a moment, she let herself believe. But it was Jake, and he wasn't holding flowers or crying with joy. He was drunk, shirt wrinkled, tie undone, eyes cold. "So, it's done," he slurred, not even looking at the babies. Emma blinked. "They're here, Lily and Grace." "You missed it." Jake snorted. "Yeah, well, I didn't sign up for all this. Diapers, crib building, screaming twins. No thanks." "What are you saying?" she whispered, tightening her grip on the girls. He pulled out a manila envelope, threw it on the foot of the bed. "Divorce papers. Signed. I'll have my lawyer handle the rest." Emma stared. "Jake, you can't just walk away. They're your daughters." "No, they're your problem now," he said, voice like ice. "Look at you. You look like hell. You really think anyone's gonna want you now?" And just like that, he turned and left. No kiss, no name spoken, no second look. Just the door closing behind him, like the final nail in a coffin. Emma wanted to scream, to sob, but she looked down at her girls, both sleeping now. Innocent, unaware. She kissed their foreheads, whispered through clenched teeth, "We're going to be okay. I don't know how, but I swear, we'll make it." And that night in a hospital room bathed in sterile light, a version of Emma Blake died. The hopeful newlywed. The woman who believed in fairy tales. But something new was born too. A mother. A fighter. A woman who wouldn't wait for someone else to save her. She was going to save herself. And two tiny reasons slept peacefully on her chest, breathing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The heartbeat of a promise stronger than any ring Jake ever put on her finger. 5 years later, Emma Blake stood in front of the fogged bathroom mirror in her tiny apartment, her toothbrush hanging from the side of her mouth as she quickly tried to untangle her damp hair. The twins were already up, Lily humming off key from the living room, Grace arguing with a toaster she had no business touching. The bathroom light flickered, again. "I swear this place is held together with duct tape and prayers," Emma muttered, tossing her brush in the sink. The mirror cleared just enough for her to catch a glimpse of herself. Tired eyes, faint lines at the corners, skin pale under the bathroom's cold light. And yet, there was something else. A kind of quiet determination. She didn't look like the woman in the hospital bed anymore. That woman had been broken. This one was just exhausted. After Jake left, Emma had done what she always did, figured it out. She cleaned houses during the day, worked catering gigs at night, and took online interior design courses in between. It wasn't glamorous, it barely paid the bills. But her girls had never gone without love, even if they had gone without brand-name shoes. Mom Grace shouted from the other room, "Lily's hogging the last toaster waffle." Emma sighed. "We're sharing this morning. Remember, 2 bites each like civilized humans." "We're 5, Lily yelled back. "Exactly," Emma said, pulling on her faded black slacks and a pressed white button-up. The makeshift uniform for her catering shift tonight? Tonight was a fancy event. The Carden Foundation's annual charity gala held at the historic Fairgrove Hotel. The kind of place with valet parking jazz quartets and guests who wore tuxedos that probably cost more than Emma's car. But for her it was another paycheck. The twins would be staying with Mrs. Abernathy, their sweet 76-year-old neighbor, who babysat in exchange for home-cooked meals and company. The girls loved her, and thankfully, she had an iron stomach for cartoon marathons and glitter. After brushing their hair, kissing their foreheads, and stuffing snacks in plastic bags, Emma kissed them goodbye. "Will you bring back dessert?" Lily asked, wide-eyed. "If there's any left," Emma said. "But remember, the workers don't usually get to take food home." "That's not fair," Grace pouted. "You work harder than anyone." Emma's heart tugged. Maybe, but life doesn't always play fair. That's why we keep playing nicer. As she arrived at the hotel's loading entrance, she was greeted by the usual bustle. Servers lining up trays, cooks yelling in the kitchen, event staff panicking over misplaced floral arrangements. Blake, her supervisor, barked, "Wine service, VIP section, don't spill." They're rich enough to own the moon. Emma grabbed the tray of crystal glasses and exhaled slowly. She moved into the grand ballroom, the hum of violins and laughter filling the air. The room sparkled with chandeliers and people in black tie finery, women in floor-length gowns, men comparing investment portfolios. Conversations floated past her as she maneuvered between guests. "We're thinking Aspen for New Year's. Did you see the stock report on Hendrix?" Olivia wore that to the art auction. It wasn't her world. She was invisible here. That was the unspoken rule. Caterers were ghosts. She was refilling glasses at a high-top table when she heard a voice. Emma Blake. Her breath caught. Turning slowly, she came face to face with someone from another life. Lauren Preston. Her college roommate. Perfect posture. Designer dress. A face untouched by struggle. And that voice, the one Emma had once known so well, was now laced with confusion. "Oh my God, it is you," Lauren beamed. "What are you doing here? Are you part of the foundation staff?" Emma hesitated. She glanced down at the tray in her hands. "I'm working the event," she said simply. Lauren blinked. "As in catering?" Emma nodded. "Oh." Lauren's smile faltered for a second, then flickered back. "I just always thought you'd be designing for Architectural Digest by now. Didn't you marry that real estate guy, Jake something?" Emma's throat tightened. "We divorced a long time ago," she said. Lauren glanced around, clearly scanning for a way out. "Well, you look great. Maybe we'll catch up soon." Emma gave a tight smile. "Sure." And just like that, old Lauren vanished into the sea of diamonds and champagne. Emma turned on her heel and moved toward the edge of the ballroom. Her heart thudded in her chest, not from the encounter, but from the reminder of what her life had almost been. Then it happened. A man in a sharp tuxedo stepped backward, right into her. The tray tipped, red wine sailed through the air like a slow-motion nightmare, and landed squarely on the front of his crisp white shirt. Gasps, a few chuckles. Emma's eyes went wide. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Hey, the man said, holding up his hands. "It's just a shirt. Are you okay?" Emma blinked. He wasn't angry. In fact, he looked amused. He had kind green eyes, hair dark and neatly styled, mid-30s. He looked like he belonged in a magazine ad for luxury watches. But his voice was warm, grounding. "I'm fine," she stammered. "But your shirt?" "It's a shirt," he repeated with a smile. "Are you sure you're not hurt?" She nodded. "I should get club soda. Maybe salt." "I promise it's okay." He extended a hand. "I'm Nathan Whitmore." Emma nearly dropped the tray again. Nathan Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Tech, billionaire, philanthropist, widower. She'd seen his name in headlines, never in person, and now she'd spilled wine all over him. She couldn't speak, could barely breathe. He grinned. "Tell you what, you owe me a coffee?" She stared. What coffee?" he said. "No red wine, just a cup. With you." She was still processing that when her supervisor appeared, face red and furious. "Emma, what happened?" "Mr. Whitmore, we are so sorry." "It was my fault," Nathan said smoothly. "I bumped into her." Emma blinked again. He turned to her. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., 3rd and Main, I'll be waiting." And then, as if he hadn't just invited her to coffee like it was the most normal thing in the world, Nathan Whitmore vanished into the crowd. Emma stood frozen, wine-stained and breathless. Was this a setup, or was it the first twist in a new chapter she never saw coming? The coffee shop sat on the corner of 3rd and Main, its brick exterior charmingly weathered and ivy trailing across the windows. It was the kind of place that made you feel like time slowed down once you stepped inside, a little sanctuary tucked away from the hustle of downtown. Emma had never been inside, only passed it a dozen times on her way to cleaning jobs or school drop-offs. It always looked like the kind of place where people had business meetings and conversations about European getaways. She didn't belong there. But now, at 2:59 p.m., she stood at the front door wearing the nicest outfit she owned, a simple navy blue dress she'd found at a thrift store. Her hands were clammy, her stomach tangled in knots. This wasn't just coffee. This was him. Nathan Whitmore. She had looked him up the night before, of course. Tech mogul, founder of a billion-dollar software company, board member of 3 charities, featured in Forbes' top 40 under 40. The internet made him look untouchable. But that wasn't the man she met in the ballroom. That man had smiled at her like she was someone, had offered her coffee after she doused him in Merlot. Emma took a deep breath and pushed the door open. A bell jingled overhead. The place smelled like roasted beans and vanilla. Exposed brick walls, dark leather chairs, soft jazz playing in the background. Everything felt warm. And then she saw him. Nathan sat in a corner booth in a charcoal gray sweater and jeans that probably cost more than her car. But he wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't scrolling through emails. He was looking for her. When their eyes met, he stood immediately. "Emma," he said like he'd been holding his breath since the night before. "You remember my name?" she said, surprised by her own voice. "I never forget people who throw wine at me." She smiled. An actual smile. Not the tight, guarded kind she gave at work. This one came from somewhere lighter. They sat. He ordered coffee black. She hesitated. "I'm guessing hot chocolate," he asked, grinning. She raised a brow. "Why?" "You've got that look," he said. "The kind of person who still believes in happy endings even if you pretend not to." She flushed. "You're not wrong." The barista brought over her hot chocolate, steaming topped with whipped cream and a dusting of cinnamon. She wrapped her hands around the mug like it might protect her from unraveling. "Thank you," she said, "for yesterday, for not yelling." He shrugged. "Wasn't your fault. Besides, the shirt was ugly. You did me a favor." Emma laughed before she could stop herself. Nathan leaned back slightly, his gaze curious but kind. "You're not used to people seeing you, are you?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You move like someone who's used to disappearing. Like if you don't make noise, no one will ask too many questions." Emma sat very still. No one had ever said that aloud. She swallowed. Life teaches you to keep your head down sometimes. Life's a brutal teacher, he said quietly. But I've found the best students are usually the strongest people in the room. They were quiet for a moment. She sipped her drink. Can I ask something, he said. She nodded. What do you dream about not now? Before? She hesitated. Before life got heavy, before the bills and the worry and the long shifts. Emma stared into her mug. I wanted to design homes, she said finally. Make spaces feel like sanctuaries. I always thought, maybe I could create peace for someone even if I couldn't find it for myself. Nathan's gaze didn't waver. I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, he said. And I read a lot of pitch decks. Emma smiled, but it wobbled. I don't know how to dream anymore, she admitted. I barely have time to breathe. It's just, wake up, feed the girls, work homework, dishes, laundry, second job, collapse, repeat. Nathan leaned forward, elbows on the table. You have daughters. Twins, she said, warmth blooming in her voice despite the fatigue. Lily and Grace. They're 5. Opposite in every way. He smiled. Tell me about them. And so she did. She told him how Lily was her little scientist, always asking questions like, why is the sky blue and do trees sleep? She talked about Grace's unshakable confidence, how she performed made-up songs in the living room with the flair of a Broadway star. As she spoke, Nathan watched her like there was nowhere else he'd rather be. No phone buzzing, no meetings waiting, just her. I think they're lucky, he said. Emma laughed softly. Lucky we live in a 1-bedroom apartment with a space heater that rattles and neighbors who scream at their dog. They're lucky, he repeated, because they've got a mom who sees them, who shows up. The words hit harder than she expected. She blinked fast, willing the tears away. You okay? He asked gently. No one talks to me like this, she whispered. He reached across the table, not touching her hand, just placing his own palm there. An invitation, not a demand. Maybe that should change. She looked at him, at his sincerity, his kindness. I don't know what this is, she said. Neither do I, he admitted, but it feels worth exploring. A pause. I'm not looking for someone to save me, she said, the edge of fear creeping into her voice. He nodded. Good, because I'm not looking to be a savior. I'm looking for something real. Emma exhaled slowly. Let herself feel it. The unfamiliar pull of something soft and safe. Then maybe we can start with coffee. Hot chocolate, he corrected with a smile. She chuckled. Right, hot chocolate. Outside the cafe, the wind picked up, but inside something warmer had taken root. And for the first time in years, Emma Blake walked home, not just with caffeine in her veins, but with the quiet possibility of hope brewing inside her heart. 6 weeks had passed since that coffee date. In that time, Emma Blake had learned that hope wasn't just a feeling. It was a practice, a choice, one she made every time she answered Nathan Whitmore's call, every time she let herself smile a little longer, laugh a little louder. They had taken it slow, dinner at a quiet Italian place, a walk through the botanical gardens where Emma had shyly talked about colors, texture, and space, and Nathan had listened like her words were priceless. He never pushed, never rushed. He just showed up. Every time, but even so, every time he complimented her, she shrank a little. Every time he held her gaze too long, she panicked. Her past whispered cruel things. You're not beautiful. Not anymore. You're baggage. A charity project. Nathan never said any of that, but Jake had, and his voice still echoed in her head. Until the afternoon, Nathan called and said, I want to take you somewhere, where she asked, stirring pasta at the stove while Grace and Lily colored on the kitchen floor. Just trust me. Emma nearly said no, nearly made an excuse, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the way he always showed up. Maybe it was the way Lily had said that morning, Mom, you smile more when your phone rings now. So she said yes. And 2 days later, she stood outside Maison de Belle, a boutique spa and salons in downtown Raleigh that looked like it belonged on a red carpet. She nearly turned around twice before Nathan pulled up in his sleek black Tesla and stepped out in dark jeans and a soft gray sweater. Casual, effortless. He smiled the moment he saw her. You came. I almost didn't. I know, but you did, and that means something. Emma fidgeted with the strap of her purse. Nathan? This place looks like it costs more than my rent. Maybe it does, he said, but today isn't about cost. It's about worth. Your worth. I don't need a makeover, she said quietly. I know, he replied, but I think you deserve one. Not because you're not beautiful now, but because I want you to see yourself the way I see you. Her throat tightened. I'm not used to people doing things for me. Then let me be the first. He offered his hand. Emma stared at it for a moment. Then she took it. Inside the salon was a sanctuary of soft lights, calming scents, and warm greetings. The stylist Vanessa had fiery red hair and a voice like honey. She didn't talk at Emma. She talked with her. What makes you feel good? Vanessa asked. Emma blinked. What? When you look in the mirror, what makes you feel like you? No one had ever asked her that before. She thought about it. I don't know. I guess clean lines, natural tones, nothing too loud, just strong, quietly strong. Vanessa beamed. We can work with that. Over the next 3 hours, Emma was pampered in ways she hadn't imagined since her wedding day. Her long hair, usually tied in a low bun, was trimmed and styled into soft, shoulder-length waves that framed her face. Vanessa worked in warm tones, subtle layers. She looked like herself, but more confident. The makeup artist used gentle strokes, bronze accents to highlight her cheekbones, gold shimmer around her eyes that made her brown eyes pop like candlelight. And the clothes? Oh, the clothes. While Emma was in the styling chair, Nathan had stepped out with a personal shopper. They returned with a modest but elegant collection of outfits in muted greens, creams, and burgundies. Nothing flashy, everything timeless. When Emma emerged from the changing room in a forest green wrap dress, Nathan stood up, visibly stunned. His voice dropped to a whisper. You look like you own the room." Emma laughed nervously. "I feel like I snuck in through the back door." "You didn't sneak in," he said. "You belong here." She turned to the mirror and studied her reflection. For the first time in 5 years, she didn't hear Jake's voice in her head. She didn't hear that cruel whisper, "No one will ever want you now." What she heard instead was her daughters laughing. What she saw was a woman who had survived, a woman who had built a life from nothing, a woman who was worth seeing. Tears prickled in her eyes. "I don't know what to say." Nathan stepped beside her. "You don't have to say anything. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Don't ever shrink again." She looked up at him. "I don't want to." "Then don't." As they left the salon, Emma cradled a garment bag over one arm, her new haircut catching the afternoon sun. They drove back to her apartment in silence, both wrapped in thoughts too big for small talk. When they arrived, she hesitated. "You want to come in?" Nathan looked surprised. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I want you to meet them, Lily and Grace." Inside, the girls screamed when they saw her. "Mom, you look like a princess," Grace declared, spinning in a circle. "You smell different," Lily added, sniffing suspiciously. Emma laughed. "You look happy," Mrs. Abernathy said from the couch. Emma met Nathan's eyes. "I think I am," she said. Nathan stayed for dinner, boxed mac and cheese and apple slices. He sat cross-legged on the floor, helping Lily with puzzles, while Grace asked him 900 questions about dinosaurs. Emma watched it unfold like a dream. After the girls went to bed, she walked Nathan to the door. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me before I saw myself." He cupped her cheek gently. "I'd do it all again." She leaned into his touch, and somewhere buried under layers of years and hurt, something began to bloom. Not just attraction, but healing, maybe even love. Spring had melted into early summer, and with it came a subtle but seismic shift in Emma Blake's world. What started as coffee and cautious smiles had evolved into something deeper, more permanent. Nathan was no longer just a charming man who showed up at doorways with flowers and kind words. He was part of their lives now. Every Sunday he brought bagels and played board games with the twins. On Wednesdays he helped Lily with math homework, while Grace stood on the coffee table performing imaginary musicals. Sometimes Emma would come home from a shift to find him sitting cross-legged on the rug, reading Goodnight Moon like it was Shakespeare. And not once, not even once, did he make it feel like an obligation. Emma watched him closely in those moments, waiting for a flicker of resentment, a crack in the kindness, but it never came. One afternoon, after a backyard picnic full of juice boxes and grass stains, Emma sat with Nathan on the back steps while the girls blew bubbles across the lawn. "They love you," she said. eyes still fixed on the chaos of soapy laughter. Nathan smiled softly. I love them too. She looked at him then, and he didn't look away. That night, after the girls were tucked in and the dishes were drying on the rack, Grace emerged from her bedroom, holding her stuffed bear by the ear. Beste eins in die Benbassa. Mr. Nathan, she asked sleepily, rubbing one eye. Yes, sweetheart. Can I ask you something really important? Nathan sat up straight. Of course. She walked up to him and whispered, not quietly, but in that loud, breathy way only kids can whisper. Can I call you Daddy? The words hung in the air like a bubble, fragile and waiting. Emma froze in the hallway. Her heart pounded. She hadn't planned for this moment, hadn't rehearsed it. She wasn't even sure it should happen yet. But Nathan didn't flinch. He bent down so he was eye level with Grace. You can call me whatever feels right in your heart, he said gently. And if that's Daddy, then I'd be honored. Grace beamed, hugged him fiercely, then shuffled off to bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. Emma stood silently at the edge of the hallway. Nathan turned to her, emotion rising in his throat. I didn't expect that, he said quietly. She's never asked that before, Emma whispered. I'm not trying to replace anyone, he added quickly. I love them. Like they're mine. Emma walked to him, slowly, carefully. Her guard, once made of steel, was softening. She placed a hand on his chest over his heart. They are yours, she said, not by blood, but in every way that matters. He covered her hand with his. And just like that, a new chapter turned. Over the next few weeks, everything deepened. Lily began calling him Dad, too. Quietly at first, then, with the full, giggling confidence of a child who felt safe. He picked them up from school when Emma had a late shift, helped Grace build a diorama of a prehistoric jungle complete with hand-painted clay dinosaurs, sat with Lily on stormy nights when thunder made her crawl under the covers and hide. One day, Emma came home to find Nathan at the kitchen table, with both girls teaching them how to fold paper cranes. There's a legend, he explained, that if you fold 1,000 of these, your wish comes true. What's your wish? Lily asked. He looked up at Emma, standing in the doorway. This, he said simply, this moment, this life. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Emma and Nathan sat on the worn-down couch, their hands intertwined. I used to believe love was supposed to sweep you off your feet, Emma said softly. But now I think the real kind, the kind that lasts. It holds you steady. Nathan looked at her like she was made of gold. You do that for me, he said. You make everything steady. She exhaled slowly, her heart full and trembling. I want to tell them, he added, formally, that I want to be their dad, for real, for always. Emma nodded, tears brimming. They already feel it, she said, but saying it out loud, that'll mean the world. So, they planned a quiet day, just the four of them. A picnic in the park, sandwiches and lemonade, a storybook Nathan had written himself with each girl as the hero of her own chapter. And at the end of the story, the last page read, and they knew without a doubt that this man was their forever dad. Not because he had to be, but because he chose them, and because they chose him back. Lily and Grace stared at the page in silence. Then Grace jumped into his arms. I knew you were our dad, she declared, even before the story. Lily, ever the more thoughtful of the two, leaned in quietly. I love you, she whispered into his ear. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. He looked at Emma, who sat watching with her arms wrapped around her knees, her chest rising and falling with emotion she could barely contain. After years of holding it all together, of surviving and striving and sacrificing, her heart was finally being held too. That night, while brushing Grace's hair before bed, Emma asked softly, What made you ask him to be your daddy? Grace shrugged. Because when he hugs me, I feel safe, like I don't have to be brave all the time. Emma froze. That was it, the difference. With Jake, she'd always had to be strong and visible, apologetic. With Nathan, she could just be, and her girls, they could bloom. As she closed their bedroom door and walked back into the warm light of the living room, Nathan stood holding a cup of tea. He handed it to her. Ready to be a real family, he asked. Emma nodded, no hesitation this time. Yeah, she whispered. Let's be a family. It was the kind of weekend that felt like a dream. Blue skies, a breeze that smelled like pine, and a lake so still it looked like glass. Nathan had kept the destination a surprise until they pulled off the main highway and followed a winding road deep into the North Carolina mountains. Emma sat in the passenger seat of his Tesla, eyes wide as they came to a stop in front of a cedar and stone lake house nestled among towering evergreens. "Welcome to Serenity Point," Nathan said, stepping out and opening her door. "My parents built it when I was a kid. I haven't brought anyone here in a long time." Lily and Grace were already bouncing in their booster seats, pressing their noses to the windows. "There's a dock and a canoe," Grace shouted. "Can we fish?" Lily asked. "Only if you're ready to catch the biggest bass in the lake," Nathan said with a grin. Emma blinked still, trying to process it all. "You never mentioned this place. I wanted it to feel special," he said, "because this weekend is." They spent the afternoon exploring, Grace collecting pine cones like rare jewels, Lily mapping every trail with serious precision. Nathan grilled burgers on the deck while the girls ran barefoot across the lawn. By sunset, they were all in the canoe floating in the middle of the lake. The sky turned to watercolor, lavender rose and tangerine reflected in the rippling water. "This is the most beautiful place I've ever been," Emma said, leaning against Nathan's shoulder. "It is now," he replied softly, kissing her hair. Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep in the cozy loft above, Nathan asked Emma to meet him on the dock. She wrapped herself in a blanket and stepped out under a sky so full of stars it made her dizzy. He stood there, nervous energy radiating off him, hands in pockets, breath visible in the mountain air. "What's going on?" she asked, her heart thudding. Nathan turned to face her, holding something small in his hand. "I didn't plan some big speech," he said. "And this isn't a perfect proposal with string lights and string quartets." Emma's breath caught. "But it's real," he continued. "Because you're real. Because every single day I've spent with you and the girls has made me more certain that this, you, is what I want for the rest of my life." He opened the box. Inside was a delicate vintage-inspired ring, elegant, understated, timeless. "Emma Blake," he said, voice thick. "Will you marry me?" For a second, the world froze. And then Emma, tears streaming down her cheeks, whispered, "Yes." She threw her arms around him, laughing and crying all at once. Behind them, two little voices called from the shadows. "We saw the whole thing," Grace shouted from the window. "Does this mean we're getting dessert?" Lily added. Emma and Nathan turned, laughing as the girls rushed out onto the dock in their pajamas. He knelt again, this time not for Emma, but for them. "Lily, Grace, will you let me be your dad, for real, forever?" They didn't hesitate. "Yes," Grace yelled. "Are you kidding?" Lily said. "You already are." They hugged him tight and Emma joined the pile. For one glorious moment, everything felt whole. But only 3 days later, the dream shattered. It was a Wednesday. Emma was at her newly opened design studio, a modest space downtown with thrifted furniture, mood boards on the wall, and a single flickering lamp that refused to stay on. The bell over the front door jingled. She looked up from her laptop and froze. Jake. He stood there, older, but still sharp in that calculating way. He wore a wrinkled blazer and a smug smile. "Wow," he said, glancing around. "You've done well for yourself." Emma's blood ran cold. "What are you doing here?" "Just wanted to see the woman who took my kids and turned them into a meal ticket." "What?" she snapped, rising from her chair. He shrugged. "I heard about the Billionaire. Fancy trips, designer clothes, engagement. Must be nice." She stared, jaw clenched. "What do you want, Jake?" He pulled out a folded piece of paper. Custody hearing. Emma's stomach dropped. "You're kidding." "Nope. Legally, I'm still their father. I never signed away my rights. And now that you're marrying moneybags, Whitmore, I think I deserve a little something, don't you?" Emma stood frozen. "You left them," she said, voice shaking. "You abandoned them. You have no right." Jake smiled, that snake-like grin. "Courts don't care about feelings. They care about blood." She reached for her phone. "Get out. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." As the door slammed shut behind him, Emma collapsed into her chair, shaking. The past had come back, and it wanted everything. That night she told Nathan everything. He listened silently, then picked up the phone and called his lawyer. "We're not backing down," he said, eyes fierce. "We'll fight this. All of it." Emma looked at him, overwhelmed. "He'll twist everything. Say I'm using you, that I'm unstable, that I—" Nathan stopped her. "Emma, he gave up the right to call himself their father the day he walked out. And I will fight with every resource I have to protect you. All three of you." She nodded. "And for the first time in years, even in the face of a looming legal storm. She didn't feel alone. The next 6 months were a war, but not the kind fought with yelling or slammed doors. This was the quiet kind, the kind fought in conference rooms over coffee-stained custody papers and through sleepless nights full of whispered fears and shaky reassurances. Jake was true to his word. Within days of showing up at Emma's studio, his attorney had filed a petition for joint custody. The claim that Emma had deliberately alienated him from his daughters, that she was unstable, that her sudden connection to a billionaire raised concerns about emotional manipulation and financial motive. It was all lies. But lies, when dressed in legal language and delivered in a courtroom, could still do damage. Nathan's legal team moved swiftly. A former federal judge, now acting as his personal counsel, along with a family law attorney with a reputation for eviscerating deadbeat dads, assembled a wall of evidence. Phone records, text messages, statements from teachers, neighbors, even Mrs. Abernathy from across the hall. Photos, emails, the divorce decree. And most damning of all, 6 years of absolute silence from Jake. Not one birthday card, not one missed call, nothing. Still the case dragged on. Mediation, preliminary hearings, Jake delaying everything, hoping to bleed them out with exhaustion. But Nathan didn't flinch. "I've fought bigger men with smaller hearts," he told Emma one night, as they sat at their kitchen table going through folders of documents. "He doesn't scare me." Emma, however, wasn't just afraid of losing. She was afraid of her girls being confused, manipulated, hurt. One afternoon, she found Lily sitting on the edge of her bed, unusually quiet. "Sweetheart," she asked, "is Jake really our dad?" Emma knelt down beside her. "He's your biological father?" "Yes." Lily looked down at her hands. "Does that mean we have to love him?" Emma's heart ached. "No," she said softly. "You never have to love someone. Love is earned, not forced. What matters is who shows up for you, who stays, who makes you feel safe." Lily nodded, like Nathan. Emma pulled her close, exactly like Nathan. In the middle of all this, something extraordinary happened. Emma's business began to flourish. Word spread about her eye for design, her talent for transforming small spaces into warm, livable sanctuaries. With Nathan's encouragement and the connections she'd earned through her own grit, Marigold Interiors was booked solid for months. She hired 2 assistants, moved her studio into a larger space, created a scholarship program for young mothers wanting to study design. But despite her success, the pressure never relented. Jake refused to disappear. He showed up unannounced at Lily's school once, dropped off a stuffed bear for Grace with a note that read, "From your real dad." Emma was livid. She filed for a protective order and reported the incidents to the court. "You're cornering him," Nathan warned one night, "and men like that get reckless when they're losing." "I'm not afraid of him," Emma said. "Not anymore." But deep down, she was afraid of the emotional cost to her girls, of watching them go through what she had. That fear, however, didn't stop her from planning a counterstrike. One day, while reviewing documents with her attorney, she had an idea. "What if we go public?" she said. Her lawyer raised an eyebrow. "You mean the engagement?" "No, everything." She leaned forward. "The foundation gala is in 3 months. Nathan's keynote. Half the city will be there. Judges, donors, reporters. If Jake's going to keep posturing like this, then let him try it in front of everyone." It was bold, risky, potentially explosive, but also strategic. They got to work. They prepared a press packet, collected testimonials, created a timeline of abandonment and irresponsibility. Meanwhile, Nathan continued being everything Jake wasn't. He read stories every night, made dinosaur-shaped pancakes on Saturdays, took the girls to ballet recitals and science fairs. He never missed a moment. One evening, Emma found him in the living room, holding Grace as she cried after a nightmare. "You're safe," he whispered, stroking her hair. "Nothing can hurt you here." Emma stood in the doorway, hand to her mouth, eyes full. Later, as they lay in bed, she whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For being the kind of father I always dreamed my girls would have." He kissed her forehead. "You 3 saved me just as much as I saved you." The night before the gala, Emma couldn't sleep. Her nerves were a whirlwind. Anticipation, fear, strength. She sat by the window, looking out at the street below. Nathan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "Still sure about tomorrow?" he asked. She nodded. "Tomorrow," she said, "I stopped letting him control the narrative. Nathan kissed her cheek. Then, let's make it unforgettable. They stood there for a long while, quiet, united, unshaken. And as the city lights blinked in the distance, Emma thought back to that hospital bed 5.5 years ago, and the promise she made to her newborn daughters. You will never feel abandoned. She had kept it, and tomorrow the whole world would know. The chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars above Emma's head. She stood at the grand entrance of the Fairgrove Hotel's main ballroom, wearing a deep navy gown that shimmered under the light and whispered elegance with every step she took. The very same room where just 1.5 years ago she'd spilled wine on a billionaire's white tuxedo while hiding behind a tray of glasses and the weight of her past. Tonight she was no one's server. Tonight she was Emma Blake, founder of a thriving design studio, fiancée of Nathan Whitmore, and most importantly, a mother who had fought for her daughters with everything she had. The Children's Hope Foundation Gala was in full swing. Waiters glided past with silver trays. A jazz trio played softly near the stage, and the city's elite mingled beneath gold-draped ceilings. Judges, philanthropists, reporters. Every seat was filled, every eye trained on the stage where Nathan was minutes from giving the keynote address. Emma exhaled slowly, steadying her heartbeat. She scanned the crowd, and there he was. Jake. He stood near the back in a too-tight tuxedo and wearing a smug smile. He hadn't been invited, but someone had obviously pulled a string or two. Maybe a friend in real estate. Maybe just a favor. He was good at that, getting into places he didn't belong. She watched as he spotted her. The smile faltered. She stood tall. As if on cue, Nathan stepped onto the stage. He wore a simple black suit, no tie, his presence relaxed but commanding. The applause rippled, and the room quieted. "Good evening," he began, his voice strong, smooth. "Tonight is about family. Not just the kind we're born into, but the kind we choose." Emma's heart swelled. He continued sharing stories about the foundation's work, about building homes for single parents, about the importance of showing up. Not once, but always. And then, as planned, his tone shifted. "I want to tell you a personal story," he said, eyes sweeping the room until they landed on Emma. He told them about Lily and Grace, about finding a family he didn't expect, about a woman who'd been abandoned and left with 2 newborns in a hospital bed, about how she didn't crumble. She rose. She built a life, Nathan said, brick by brick, alone, until she wasn't. Emma felt the first tear slide down her cheek. And now, he said, his voice tight with emotion, "She's the strongest woman I know, the mother of my future daughters, the love of my life." The crowd erupted in applause. Jake looked uncomfortable. He shifted in his spot, but Emma didn't look away. After the speech, the gala moved into cocktail hour. Emma was quickly surrounded. Business leaders, city officials, even a judge from family court, offering congratulations, compliments, and gratitude. Jake finally made his move. He approached from behind, nursing a drink in false confidence. "Well," he said loudly, just enough for those nearby to hear. "Quite the show." Emma turned calm as ever. "Jake." He gave a mock bow. Soon-to-be Mrs. Whitmore, must be nice. All this, from wiping down countertops and raising someone else's kids. A hush fell around them. Emma didn't flinch. "Actually," she said clearly, "it's all from never giving up. Not on myself, not on my girls, and definitely not on the future they deserve." Jake chuckled. "You really think you've won?" Emma stepped forward, her voice strong. "I know I have. You gave up your rights the day you walked out. You missed first steps, first words. You missed everything. And now, you don't get to rewrite that history because you're broke and bitter." Gasps murmured nearby. Jake scowled. "They're still my daughters." "No," Emma said coldly. "They're mine. And Nathan's. Because he showed up when you wouldn't. Because he earns their love every single day." District Attorney Lynn, who had been standing just behind Emma, stepped forward then. "Mr. Carson," she said flatly, "might be wise to stop talking. Harassment at a public charity event could land you more than embarrassment." Jake paled. "I suggest you leave," another voice added. Judge Hartley, one of the most respected family court judges in the state. Jake looked around, realized the room wasn't his to win. He sneered at Emma one last time. "You think this ends here?" Emma leaned in just enough so only he could hear. "No," she said. "It ended the day I stopped being afraid of you." Jake turned on his heel and stalked out of the ballroom, his presence erased by the applause that followed. Emma blinked stunned, and then Nathan was beside her. He took her hand, lifted it to his lips, and said just loud enough for her to hear, "I've never been more proud of anyone in my life." The rest of the night passed like a blur of laughter and champagne and soft music. But the moment that stayed with her, etched forever, was the one where her daughters ran into the ballroom dresses, flaring hair curled just for the night. Grace threw her arms around Emma's waist. "We saw you on the stage," she cried. Lily nodded, eyes sparkling. "You looked like a queen." Emma knelt down, tears in her eyes. "You two make me feel like one." Nathan knelt beside her. "Shall we dance?" he asked the girls. They nodded. And on the grand ballroom floor, Nathan Whitmore danced with the two little girls who had once been considered baggage. And Emma, she stood in the center of the life she'd built from ashes. And for the first time ever, she felt invincible. There are moments in life that rewrite everything, not in bold dramatic strokes, but in quiet ones. A morning where you wake up and realize the fear is gone. An evening where your children fall asleep knowing they are safe. A glance in the mirror where for the first time you don't see failure. You see worth. For Emma Blake, that rewrite didn't happen in a single instant. It happened over time, over hugs and homework and whispered bedtime promises, over battles fought not with fists, but with courage. It happened each time she chose not to let the past define her future. She had once been left alone in a hospital bed, holding newborns with trembling arms, and no idea how she'd survive. Now she stood with a partner who loved her fiercely, with daughters who flourished, with a business that reflected her talent and tenacity. And more than that, she stood as a woman who had finally learned to believe in herself. Love hadn't saved her. She had saved herself. Love just came to stay. As the lights of the gala faded and the laughter of her girls echoed down the hotel hallway, Emma reached for Nathan's hand. They walked together, not into a fairy tale, but into something even more precious. A life they chose, a family they built, a future they owned. One step, one promise, one fearless day at a time. Because in the end, the greatest kind of love story is the one where you finally learn to love yourself first, and then let others in.